coming. I hope you didn't have a two-night and two alcoholic night yesterday, because it was a beautiful event. So thanks for everybody who's already awake. It's already hard. It's always hard to be one of the first panels, I guess. So I'm pleased to be with you guys. I think it's an amazing team of Metaverse and Web3 brains on the stage. My name is FELIX. I'm the co-founder of the Asian part within the decentralized Dash network. That was the first DAO in the world, the first Bitcoin fork. We built payment systems all over the place for a very long time. I am part of a venture builder called Futerio, and now I'm building a metaverse called Space. That is a social commerce metaverse where we have made it incredibly easy for everybody to build a commercial experience in the metaverse, a shop, a gallery, an event. Essentially, you go into the Space metaverse, you choose a template, you upload your inventory, and you are ready to sell things physical, digital, or phygital within 15 minutes. So that's me. Please, let's make a quick round of introductions. Go ahead.
I'm David Palmer. I'm from Vodafone Group, one of the biggest telcos in the world. And I head their Web3 practice. And I'm also co-founder of a Web3-based platform, which is bringing together cellular and blockchain Web3 technologies called Digital Asset Broker. Really honored to be here today. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is IRINA KARAGYAUR. I'm the founder of BQ9 Web3 Advisory. Many of you also may know me as Polkadot Head Ambassador and Head of Ecosystem Growth at NFT Parachain. I've been in the space for over 3 years now, launching infrastructure, helping applications to grow and thrive in the Web3 space. And I believe that Metaverse does not exist without Web3, but we need to really understand where we are in the roadmap and communicate properly what is being built, what is currently possible, and what will be possible in the next 5, 10, 20 years.
My name is Michael Song. I consider myself a digital finance venture builder. So I invest heavily in the space. I have a lot of joint venture partnerships. And then I'm kind of the guy that takes some of this core infrastructure and puts together venture builds new projects. Typically for institutional use cases, so bridging sort of Web 2 into Web 3 and crypto, digital finance innovation into real world finance and smart cities and things like that. I think my investment or partnership thesis is really focusing on the core infrastructure that will bring the financialization layer for Web3 and Metaverse. So that way, it doesn't matter how the Metaverse evolves, everybody needs to have blockchain interoperability to allow digital assets to transfer, payment technologies, wallets, these type of things. So those are the basic building blocks for the future.
Thank you for the intro. Let's start with the elephant in the room. Guys, can you put up the picture? To the screen, is that possible? Wait for it, wait for it. Okay, so here we go. I think let's start with the elephant in the room. The metaverse is dying. That's kind of the narrative. I was here last year, 1.5 years ago. And when you mention metaverse, you get like this little sparkle in everybody's eyes. Everybody was so excited, saying, okay, now, we are ready to be in this Ready Player One world where everybody's starting, to be only sitting in the metaverse, not going out anymore. This is where we are right now. I think the sparkle is a bit gone. Facebook and other are somewhat pulling out. We have a narrative that's very hard. So the question is, how do we save this baby here? And what are we doing? Why has it been dying? Why is it drowning? How do we pull it out? You said, you mentioned it actually very good, and I think you have a few ideas of why we are here where we are and how do we get out. So please, but take down the picture. We can't look at it all the time during his speech.
Yeah, I think the sort of initial sort of business models associated with NFTs and sort of this new Web3 world was based off of speculative digital assets, whether they're profile pictures like Bored Apes or virtual real estate for places like Sandbox. Most of that activity was driven by speculation. But once the bubble burst, right, there was a crypto correction with FTX and everything that's happened in the last half a year. So all that speculative money left, and then we're in a vacuum, right? And if you look at practicality, right? Let's take the Sandbox for example. There was, interesting articles written on the fact that you have this multi-billion-dollar land play, virtual land play. You got literally billionaires and all sorts of conservative people speculating on it because they wanted a piece of the action. But in real estate, it's not just the fact that you have a good location, it's the fact that there's actual foot traffic or economic activity happening in your land, right? In the case of these sort of first generation metaverses, there is no economic activity. Okay, this is all on blockchain, so you can actually see wallet transfers, and I think there was literally 50 transactions a day on Sandbox or decentralized, very low numbers relative to the actual multi-billion-dollar speculative asset that's sitting on top, right? So there's a disconnect there, right? Nobody's really going into the metaverse to do economic activity or social gaming type applications. The story is there, but the reality is not, right? You have like Meta on one side. Literally, Zuckerberg has lost something like $80 billion of valuation betting big on this Ready Player One future, but he can't even get his employees to take, there's an edict for Meta employees that they have to take one meeting a week in their own Horizons metaverse, and nobody wants to do it. They can't even get his own employees to do it. Why? Because this sort of Wii style, user experience with no real killer use case, people don't want to use it. They'd rather just use Zoom for meetings, right? So I think we're in that sort of zone right now where the first level business models are not working. There's a lot of hype, but as with the hype cycle, you have this slope of disillusionment, and coming out the other side will be real-world use cases, and we can discuss that, things like metaverse advertising and sort of Web 2 transition to Web 3 models that might be more effective for doing real-world value.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I think I share most what you said in terms of speculation. I mean, there was a lot of to dissect actually. You mentioned speculation, you mentioned the real estate, you mentioned land in the metaverse. We just had a pre-conversation, IRINA, where you mentioned the fashion use case, and actually I can confirm that the fashion use case is something that now actually sparks a lot of interest. I mean, we just did with the Space Metaverse a partnership with the Berlin Fashion Week. A few days ago, I just did an event with the Digital Fashion Week that was around the Dubai Fashion Week. And I'm seeing, in fact, a lot of labels actually having a lot of interest. And the way for them to start is to say, okay, we want to do digital clothes. I think this is something you mentioned before. I mean, the obvious step to use the digital clothes is to go in a metaverse. So actually, I mean, we did it in an H&M villa in Berlin, this event, where we kind of made a showroom where people could go in with a Berlin kind of vibe, show their digital fashion. So for me, that was a big use case, and I was really impressed. That's like all the SME companies in Germany we're searching and finding that use case. IRINA, can you confirm that? How do you see kind of the fashion developing in the metaverse?
Sure. Just to link, business models. This is important because we talk about use cases. And my impression is like use cases come from marketing people. But what about business? Are we really creating disruption? Are we really using innovation to fix business models, deliver value to the customers? How do we treat the Web3 and Metaverse? So industries like, why we all began with creators? Because Hollywood is broke, movie industries are broke, artists are not making, good living with their art. mainly because financial system doesn't support creative economy currently. We had a big revolution in the way we live, in the skill sets and the professions that are emerging now. So we need to find a way to close this gap, and technology can really help. And fashion and e-commerce is really, really good demonstration of how we can improve, because fashion world had a lot of critique. Probably ever since of 2015 Fashion Weeks in Milan, there were lots of articles, lots of discussions. Why do fashion brands need to launch 6 collections a year? It's not sustainable. We're producing too much clothing. Most of that is just to showcase items on Instagram. Fashion influencers became very powerful, then they became too many, and it all became a big hype and a bubble. So now fashion brands discovered that in order to create an image and in order to dress up people and not to waste billions of dollars and precious resources, they can actually do it digitally. So companies like DressX, they create filter, a lens for your Instagram, any other social media, and you as an influencer can take a photo of yourself in a fancy dress, most of the time in a dress that you wouldn't even be able to reproduce in the real environment. And here you go, you can go viral, you can excite people, you can create your avatar, your presence in the metaverse, in the real world, you can use AR, and a mix of things. So it's kind of real, but it's digital at the same time. And a lot of brands are discovering the benefits and discovering that this is what actually customers want, and this is what they're using. If the content goes viral, you can involve creators. It works. Another great campaign that's been launched by Louis Vuitton recently, it's a very good use case for me that brings us to the community. Another very important part. So what we discussed, why Sandbox, nobody buys lands, why European Commission launched the Metaverse, spent €500,000, nobody showed up at the opening. Why are these things happening? Because nobody thinks about the community. Nobody thinks about either existing customer base, would they like to use this product? Is this the way for us to deliver value and innovation to them or not? So what Louis Vuitton did, they launched an application. They launched a big campaign with an artist, Kusama. They did physical locations in several stores like Paris, New York, Tokyo, London, where you can download the app, have an experience inside of the store with AR collectibles. You can play mini games for 20 seconds, collect virtual items of their physical collection, and then it is also linked to a physical merchandise. So they're introducing phygital. But at the same time, they're not yet introducing Web3 or NFT. They're just studying the customer. And if you read their legal agreement on the application, they don't promise you to support the application. They don't even promise you, any reward at the end. So they're kind of taking care of reputation and things that may go wrong. So they clearly communicate to you, we're testing the waters. We want your feedback, please share your information. And they're studying who is using them, their application, who is using this way of interacting with the brand. Are they going to target Generation Z? Would they be more, engaged as customers? Because Yves Saint Laurent did a very good entry into Web 2 with the marketplace and e-commerce. They were very successful, one of the most successful brands for millennials. So these are all, we're still in experimentation phase, but what is important is to understand your existing business model and understand how Web3 technology can help your business model. And probably at the very beginning, it will not be Web3 and crypto. It will be Web 2, because in fashion, a lot of the VR and things that you can digitally wear are still Web 2. We're still talking about augmented reality and probably virtual reality, but virtual reality is another part that we need to get to, because glasses, being immersed in that space for a long time still doesn't really work. And as I always say, we've been immersed, and immersive experiences don't need to don't require us to be in the virtual world. We've been immersive as a society for thousands of years, millions of years. We can communicate in any other possible way. And what we do need is creativity and imagination.
Okay, I'll just chip in, sorry. But I think we're 100 miles ahead. I mean, I think the question that we start with is, what is the metaverse, right? Does it exist yet? And I think that's a question that we need to sort of answer. The definition is about this immersive world, and we got excited last year. I think some of that, as you said, is because of COVID and the need to sort of move to virtual collaborative working. This immersive world, some argue is the metaverse the next iteration of the internet. And we have to say whether it exists. If you look at some of the definitions, the metaverse is, and the next level of the internet is this, immersive experience where we're all seeing the same things at the same time and it's all interconnected. And that doesn't exist. What we have are a number of ecosystems that have some sort of virtual reality experiences where you can, in those ecosystems, purchase things like Sandbox and Decentraland. But it's not the metaverse, right? If we look at the actual people accessing it, and that's primarily through XR goggles, that isn't very much, right? So the first thing is that if we're going to talk about so let me just step back. The opportunity of the metaverse is massive, and it can be massive. So I think McKinsey recently outlined the opportunity to be worth US $5 trillion by 2030. That has been supported by a lot of the forecasts. So the opportunity is there. Now, if you're looking at 5 trillion GDP, that is not people on glasses playing games, using the glasses playing games. That is supply chains, that is manufacturing. That has to be a major part of our economy. So one of the questions you have is, how do you enable that? Right? And I come from the mobile world, and obviously, the two things are going to happen. Number one, to have the volumes we need, there needs to be investment to make the accessory, i.e. the glasses, either merge into phones, or you need to have investment to have access to the metaverse and these experiences on the phone. Because if you're going to be 5% of GDP, you need to be able to do it on the move, in your job, not at home wearing glasses. So access to the metaverse is a key thing. And then once you've got that access sorted out, and you start having adoption numbers that can create business models and support business models, then you're in a position to see the takeoff in business. I think going back to your point at the beginning, the reason why we have not seen the metaverse take off as expected is because we don't have the adoption, right? So on the one hand, you have Web3, 300 million active users at the moment, significant, but in a population of 6 billion, it's pretty low. The metaverse, I don't even think is 0.001% who have the XR glasses, right? So that is the problem there that needs to be solved. And I think the answer to that is mobile. We have 6.1 billion smartphones in operation. It's very clear that if you want to get adoption to the metaverse, you need access to the metaverse. And mobile will be a key enabler to those business models.
Yeah, some good points. Let me add one thing. I mean, what I've really learned in the last year is two things. You mentioned the users, and it's kind of all this. Okay, where's the business coming from? Kind of. Let me kind of dig into both of these sides. Looking at you guys, looking at myself, looking at the whole room, I feel we're just all too old to get all these people that are, are in the metaverse already, and metaverse, I don't, it's a terminology problem that has become one big thing. Everybody was asking me like, oh, you're Facebook. No, I'm not freaking Facebook. I'm building a metaverse, and there's I prefer the virtual world versus metaverse. If you look at it like that, there's so many games with like massive in-game economies. I mean, I lost like 3 years of my life in World of Warcraft, standing in the Iron Forge marketplace, arbitraging ore and iron, and making a buck there. And there's billions of people, that's a fact. And these guys they have built their stable in-game economies. I mean, there's a great documentary on EVE's Online out there, like how you can create a game, and in fact, it's like friggin' hard to create a game with like all this, trading book, Wall Street mechanics in the background. So this is kind of one part. The other part is, again, a terminology question. Everybody's talking about NFTs and blah, 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 right? You go to H&M, you go to any of the big brands, they just look at you and they don't care. You know, they don't care. Why? Because you don't give them a use case, and you mentioned it brilliantly. You know, it's about community, it's about engagement, it's about blowing stuff up. The way I approach it right now is to say, you know, let's take all this stupid terminology out and give them the use case. And the use case is actually very simple. An NFT can be a discount code, it can be a membership, it can be a royalty program you attach to a digital item. It can be something where you have a configurator between physical and digital that is the new phygital. You know, even that word is nobody wants to talk about it and understands it. So if you approach it with the use case that earns money, there you go, right? So, and this is for me, honestly, the solution on the user and on the business side. So for me, the question is like how to make brands understand to sell something to a 12-year-old that is insulting me on Roblox, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm going to tie in some things that was said before. I totally agree. In order to get to the Ready Player One, we'll eventually get there. Everybody will be in the fully virtual world, but it's going to come in stages. And so we got to start from a point where there's already hardware deployed, which will be mobile phones, and kind of a Web 2 to Web 3 experience. So, you know, everybody, when they hear Metaverse, when you go to a conference, on the backboard is going to be some guy with an Oculus type thing in the future, right? And the user experience is not there. There's an adoption cycle for the hardware, so it's going to take time. But I personally think that a nice bridge into this is AR, right? Through people with a phone in their pocket, right? You saw what Pokemon Go could do to the world, right? And that was just a very simply early game. Imagine if you apply Pokemon Go with advertising through NFTs, right? That's a project that we are actually working on. And the insight here is, you know, if you go to the sandbox, I forget the numbers, but it was some tens of thousands of unique visitors a week or whatever it was. You know, there's no social engagement, no real foot traffic. You stand in there, you look at the spinning Nike shoes in the Nike-verse for a little bit, and then you get bored and you leave, right? There isn't a killer application. Whereas in the real world, there are people walking around all the time. We are socially engaged in a conference. There's casinos and museums and tourist destinations and shopping malls and airports with millions of people with foot traffic. So, you know, I think if you tie that in with a working business model like advertising, right? Advertising has literally driven the entire internet revolution through a Google type model, right? Can we create modern forms of that where the advertising is not on a banner, where you know, this sort of outdoor advertising model, which is really outdated. If you look at if you type in Metaverse advertising into Google right now, you get a bunch of you know, Facebook Meta type things.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. If you ask ChatGPT, right? But yeah, I mean, it's old school, what I call outdoor advertising model. With, like, you guys heard of JC right? Yeah. It's basically like if there's a wall somewhere, I'll just buy the rights to the wall, slap an ad on, do some profit share, and that's like literally a decades-old business model, which is now being just fitted into the Web3 world, right? I think there has to be new types of advertising. So if you imagine, you said phygital, right? Imagine packaging NFTs with a sort of ChatGPT-enabled NFT that levels up membership, can interact with you. You can have a persistent brand experience that doesn't go away after you look away from a banner ad or something like that. There's all sorts of very interesting use cases there. So I think that will be the transition. This real world Web 2.5 into the eventual Web 3, where the adoption happens, right? And I like to just point out one thing is like, I do a lot of stuff in China, right? So China, you don't hear on the map because it seems like crypto is totally banned and things like that, which it is, right? But NFTs are dominating in sort of exponential growth in China. They don't call them NFTs, they call them digital collectibles because China doesn't like that secondary speculation stuff, right? So no Bored Apes or, you know, virtual real estate, But instead, the e-commerce, you know, China's leading the world in e-commerce, right? The digital commerce piece where you use NFTs to package phygital, you know, sort of value, or the use of them for loyalty points and things like this is very, very established. And so that's an area that I think everybody should look at over the next few years, is the sort of intersection of real-world business with NFTs and with Web3.
Yeah, but I just wanted to come in, and apologies, but I think there's something important here, right? So we've used the word NFT and blockchain interoperably and interchangeably with you know, with the metaverse, and you know, actually, I mean, we've had again another elephant in the room is that we've had an interesting few weeks. Anyone know what's happened in the last few weeks? Four banks 1 week. 4 banks collapsing. So we've used the word NFT and Web3 and blockchain interchangeably with the metaverse, and it's actually not the case. You know, before last week, and I think you know, Bitcoin and cryptos now had an injection over the last few days, thanks to what's happening in the banking sector. But actually, you know, until that point, the first 5 months of 2022. There was 120 billion invested in the metaverse, right, against the backdrop of Web3 dropping. And that was, you know, big Web2 companies like Meta investing. They bought Oculus glasses. There's been massive investments. And what these guys bring is something I mentioned earlier, adoption, right? There's over 3 trillion people on social media. And, you know, the social media are now moving to something in China that you guys have been really good at over there, which is the whole super app. And you know, recent discussions has been, okay, can you incorporate NFTs in WhatsApp? Is it going to come in Instagram? So there is another path, which is Web2, using their ecosystems and going straight to metaverse offerings, right? Which is the path that's being taken by some of them. And then there's the other side of that battle for the metaverse, which is, are we going to have a Web3 metaverse, which has NFTs and cryptocurrencies, and portability, and digital identities, and you know, the ability to take those identities across different ecosystems. And this is an important one, because the next stage is, once you've got that battle for the soul of the metaverse, i.e. Web3, Web2, or Web 2.5, then the metaverse needs to be financed, right? How are you going to finance the metaverse? How am I going to have an account? Is it going to be interchangeable wallets? Is it going to be traditional bank accounts? All of that comes on top of that first thing. You know, what is the soul of this metaverse going to be? And actually, you know, until last week, it was leaning more towards Web 2 and traditional banks. And now, you know, I think this thing changes every month, but now it's moving back towards Web 3, right? But that is a question that will shape the business models we have. So,
thank you. I mean, it's interesting points you make here. IRINA, what do you think is kind of the best approach to go from Web 3 to Web 2, from Web 2 to Web 3, and B, kind of to extend the accessibility to the metaverse in terms of, you know, desktop, mobile, VR glasses, AR reality, kind of what is your tips forward for anyone who's building a metaverse or, you know, who's doing business there?
Well, it's very important to pay attention to a few issues that we know Web 2 has. Personal profiles. How do we deal with identification? How do we make sure that we identify ourselves on the web in a safe way, in a decentralized way? How do we gain control back of our personal data? These are the 2 biggest issues that Web 2 has and things that Web 3 promised to solve. From the policy perspective, European Union is now talking about regulations of the metaverse of Web 3, and there was a brilliant article published a couple of weeks ago by the European Commission that they do want to go in the right direction this time. So everybody acknowledged that they made a lot of mistakes with Web 2, and this is the reason we have the web we have today. And we need to empower people, we need to take care of personal data. There are multiple solutions for that, and we still need to figure out what is the best way to go. But the point here is also networks do not thrive in silos, and a lot of platforms are taking bad habits from Web 2 A lot of developers come from Web 2. So when they build anything, Web 3, a marketplace, whatever, they come with the mentality, okay, I have my platform, I lock in my users, I build my silo, I make them all come here, interact, bring liquidity in. But then comes a point when it all breaks. Because you may create an initial hype, but for the long term, we need to break the silos. We need to make interoperability work among different blockchains, among different platforms, marketplaces, virtual worlds. You need to think first in the terms of making it super easy for your community. So you need to think of the people you want to be engaged with, you want to share your platform with. And if you're thinking of opening a wallet, well, make sure that that experience is seamless for them. That they don't have to flip in crypto gymnastics, go to exchanges, MetaMask, buy tokens, etc. That has to come because using crypto, being truly decentralized in Web3 is the only way to go, in my opinion. But we can't just jump there. Not everybody is ready to do that because we need to take into consideration younger people, older people, their experience with using different platforms, and the only way to go right now is Web 2.5. So using something centralized to jump into something decentralized, using AR, like the example of City is brilliant. If you remember a movie, Ghost in the Shell, they show a city where you have all this advertisement digitally, and you can see it through the lens of your phone, or at some point we'll have sort of lighter glasses, more usable glasses that will allow you to see all the advertisement digitally, but that can free our cities from all the noise and information that we not necessarily need, so we can end up in a beautiful architecture. There are many, many ways to work on it, and think about yourself, think about the world you want to build, think about people you care about and how you want them to live, and that's the right way to go, because you would always build something good for the greater good.
I like what you say. Honestly, I couldn't agree more. So out of respect for the agenda and the planning, we have like 90 seconds left. Let me ask you guys a last question, and please just throw in like 2-3 words, not more than 30 seconds. What do you think is the next trends for the Metaverse in 2023, 2024?
I think the Metaverse will start to be more business focused and will start to gain traction where it's providing use cases and capabilities that don't exist at the moment. So for example, where you have people who are disabled who can run again, people who can travel to places that they physically can't travel to. I see those as areas where the Metaverse can really add value. I think in terms of communication, browsing, other areas, it's interesting, but it's not business. So I think we'll start to see that value add come through. I think one of the key characteristics is that the Metaverse removes the barrier of geography. Geography is a key barrier. Once that's removed, that sets the platform for a whole new era of business models.
Thank you. Irina, what are your top 3 trends?
I think we'll be mainly focused on mass adoption, onboarding people easier, UX and UI, discovering new business models or transformation of the old business models. I'm seeing more and more enterprises, big brands, jumping in the space, experimenting, trying to find their way and their business opportunity there. And I think next year will be about businesses, enterprise, and mass adoption.
Fantastic. Michael?
I have to agree. I think it's about Metaverse and Web3 getting real with practical sort of transition from Web 2 to Web 3. I think advertising is huge. There's like $700 billion of digital ad spend just waiting around to flood into real world use cases. And I think also on the sort of social-fi front, where the new ways where people can act, enable each other and have social interaction, and also to maybe do, advertising and new sort of business models in a decentralized social way, incentivized by the inherent characteristics of Web3. Those are areas to look at.
Amazing. Let me add my top 3, which is AI coming to the Metaverse. DeFi is meeting NFT, is meeting the Metaverse, and kind of leverage on every item you have in there. that's actually it, you know. So it's actually funny that we kind of have all a bit different trends in mind that are coming. And I would add one more, which is gaming engines becoming mature. You mentioned it with VR and so on. So I'm excited for this future. I hope you guys too. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for talking. Enjoy the rest of the day.